How does shadow data sort of come about, and why is this an issue?
Yeah, I mean, there's like an endless number of different forms of shadow data. And it could just be random backups of data that you've done throughout your workload. It can be some, chats that you've sent to your coworkers in Slack.
Every department is trying to work on their own objectives, and they need
Right.
a solution. And sometimes either they don't know, you haven't published where it needs to go clearly, it doesn't fit their needs exactly, the requirements don't meet, or they need something fast and they see something free on the outside that they don't believe they even have to sign a contract for.
We sometimes just have like people installing like Dropbox on general servers that it's not supposed to be there just because of the convenience and that, it's free. I'd say another kind of big enabler is the cloud, right? In the cloud environment, you could literally in like a few clicks, like, oh yeah, for my new feature, I'll store some data in like a new DynamoDB table or what have you. And I could do it like literally in 2 seconds as a developer. So it's much easier for me than going through the whole like correct pipeline.
Jonathan says, is the shadow data problem a specific issue embedded in shadow IT? Can you still have problems with shadow data in the unlikely event you don't have shadow IT?
It can also be in so many, unexpected places, which isn't necessarily shadow IT, right? I mean, log files, your application is logging stuff. You just have like, sensitive data in log files. That's kind of a classic example.
Guy asked this question, how can I find shadow data in my cloud?
Currently, there's no clear way. It's a bit of a manual process. Basically, you're someone who's in charge of finding it right. So where do I start? You start interviewing your development team. Like you literally start interviewing the R&D and understanding what data the application is generating, what interactions there are, those data pipelines. You start trying to like build out this graph or architecture of where the organization is holding data. It's quite manual.
So there's 3 ways. First way is to actually do surveys. The second way is to actually monitor people, monitor the traffic inside your network and remote where they're using this outside.
So are you just logging traffic at this point?
Logging traffic, and specifically for this. And then the third is to have technology that actually goes out and starts to actually crawl. And all 3 of those need to be deployed at the same time is the key.
So Guy asked another good question. Is shadow data, and I'm going to throw this to you, Roey, more common in modern architectures like microservices? Like where are we seeing more examples of it?
So kind of take you guys in the Wayback Machine to like pre-cloud days, pre-microservices. You had like this monolithic application. You had a few databases, and it's quite easy to like understand, lock them down, understand where they are, who's accessing them. Now we fast forward to the cloud environment and microservices. So every microservice has its own kind of like a database, and it's very easy for developers to upload. Oh, I'll upload a new as a feature. It has its own little database, and that's makes it even more hard to kind of go after this problem and understand where it's all located.
I mean, microservice is probably less of the problem. It's proportional to the people who have their hands on it, right? It's not just the developers or the sysadmins, DevOps folks. It's really just the users who are generating a lot of this.
So if I'm a manager, I'm trying to make sure that my employees understand the importance of data and are more careful with it, but also trying to in the processes that the company is building out applications, building out the workloads to better incorporate and document where the application, where the workload is storing sensitive data. So you have something to look at when people ask you, hey, where in your workload do you have sensitive data? Oh, I have all of this documentation that can help me, gives me a good starting point. From a more technical aspect, you can at least put guardrails on them regarding who has access, what what flows they have, right? So who can access the data, what can access the data?
Okay, there's two answers to that. Number one is segment your network. So use segmentation to limit access to the places that it shouldn't be based on those populations applications. The other is to actually do inline monitoring and actually deny access to those SaaS and repositories where it's not assigned to you. They don't use single sign-on, whatever.
You probably have this problem in your company. First step, like I agree with Tim, start from somewhere. So just like at least start working on mapping out and figuring out where you have your data, and then continue from there. But start from somewhere.
Once you get into a more mature organization, create shadow data and make sure you use what's called deception technology. So that becomes your loss, right? Which is you're losing something that actually you build into your system to detect for. And so you'll know when data is being exfiltrated.